This is Ryan Finkelstein, host of Locked On Mets, and on today's show, I was joined by Brian Wright for a Throwback Thursday. Brian is an author. He's written books Mets in Tens and Mets All-Time All-Stars. He comes on most weeks to give us a look back into Mets history, but this week we were talking about the latest 30 for 30 on the Mets, Once Upon a Time in Queens, giving you a really detailed look at the 1986 Mets. It's a great conversation as we go through our thoughts from watching the film.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is always a great time for a Throwback Thursday when the Mets are nearing the end of their season, a little bit too soon when it comes to staying in contention. I'm happy today to be joined by Brian Wright. You can find him on Twitter at BrianWright86, and that is what we're going to start off talking about. 86, the 30 for 30, much awaited, came out, and I was actually in New York watching the Mets. So I didn't get a chance to watch it until I knew I was going to talk to you. I'm like, I got to watch this because I think that there's going to be a lot to talk about. What was your first impressions? I'm sure you watched it when it came out last week. Getting to see that most important piece of Mets history told, but really told in a complete angle of looking back to the start of the franchise and the culmination of the 86 Mets.
Yeah, I loved it. Was looking forward to it for over a year when it was announced it was going to happen. I think it was like July of 2020 they announced it. And I mean, I talked to Nick Davis before and after it came out. I've talked to him for a Q&A on Metsmerized, and I had told him, I was like, well, you could put, for me, I was born in '87. I was born like 9 months after 1986 the season happened, so that is the team that made me a Mets fan. I had the highlight video, I've watched it maybe 1,000 times. That might be being low.
The old school VHS.
Yes,
I grew up on that too. My dad has 2 copies. I knew more about the 86 Mets than the teams that I watched growing up because I would always watch. And this, for me, This is like, all right, that was like the G-rated version that you got. And this was like, all right, let's tell the dirty stories. Let's get to PG-13 rated R. Here's what was really going on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I lived through that VHS, and obviously the team produced one, which the homogenized everything is sunny and starry and everything, everything is puffy clouds,
which was good for us as kids.
Oh yeah, because and I'll talk about this, how I learned more about it later. And I was talking to Nick, and I said, you could have put that documentary up on ESPN, just said it's a new documentary and put A Year to Remember instead, and I would have been happy. I would have just said, oh, great. So I am not the fan that obviously wants to appeal to Mets fans, but I'm one of those fans that 1986 Mets are literally what the team that made me a Mets fan. And as I said, I knew more about the 86 Mets than I did about the current Mets when I was 5-6 years old. So so nothing that came out, nothing significant. None of the significant storylines of the documentary I was surprised by or were like news to me, because I, as someone like you, just know about this team inside and out. So that was not what I was not like going into the documentary going, oh, I'm going to find something revelatory. I mean, there were some small things, Dwight Gooden's background. I didn't really know everything about it, so that was very informative and sad at the same time. The other small things. So I am not the person that was good looking for some totally new breaking news. What I loved about it was that how it tied or how it paralleled New York City, because that is a story that's a great way to tell the story, is how, to me, that there's really not been any team that is more closely associated with the place and the time than the Mets were in 1986. And that this documentary talks about this many times over, and it should. So that's what I loved about it. I love the music, how the music kind of brought you into the era. Like the Beastie Boys. Not that I know much about the Beastie Boys. I know that one song. That's the song that they use. That's the one song. They had other songs that would tie to the era, and the editing was great. Just so it was visually appealing, and I love that part. Just the visuals, the sound, I guess the senses I'm trying to get at. So I understand there are people that may say, gosh, 1986 Mets again. Like, they're one of the most documented teams in history, as they should be. But so to me, some people might say 4 hours is a lot. To me, 4 hours wasn't enough. I wanted
Yeah.
more. And also there are people that say, well, you're glorifying, people are glorifying this team. And this documentary to me does not glorify it at all.
No.
It tells a story and allows you to make a judgment. And for me, over the years, as we talked about the VHS, it's, the G-rated version. And since then, since I, became a fan, I've read Jeff Pearlman's great book, The Bad Guys Won. And that was an eye opener. I learned a lot about what they did off the field. And I've since been able to compartmentalize and kind of separate the fact that they did reprehensible things off the field and condemn them for those. Acknowledge, that some players had addictions and weren't helped out in the way that maybe we look at it today. And I'm specifically talking about Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden. And that's really unfortunate, because it's if they had that, if we looked at them then the way we look at people who have addiction now, I would like to think their careers have been a lot different. So I've been able to kind of understand, condemn the bad things, also understand, that those who have addictions needed help and didn't get it. I mean, I already knew that, but it reinforced it, and also celebrate the fact that they were a freaking great team.
Yeah.
So I still love the team for the way they performed on the field. And let's face it, they haven't won since.
You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching your sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the other good stuff you're missing? Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings the live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. I don't know if you knew this, but I share a bed with a pro football quarterback, an Olympic swimmer, and a national women's soccer star, which I should probably explain, because when I heard how many elite athletes sleep on a Molecule mattress and call it their best sleep ever, I decided I have to order one for myself, and they were spot on. Molecule sleep scientists literally created the world's most perfect mattress. It's unlike any other mattress in a box. It's cool to the touch, not like other foam mattresses. It has 6 times the airflow of my old mattress, so it keeps me cool all night. It has zone reflex layers that adjust with me in all my weird sleep positions, so I never wake up with that stiff neck or a sore back. Molecule mattress is how elite athletes get the best sleep ever. You can sleep on your Molecule mattress risk-free for 100 nights. If you don't have your deepest, most restorative sleep ever, you can return it. So visit onmolecule.com and save 20% with the promo code Locked On. Again, save 20% with the promo code Locked On at onmolecule.com. I think that the whole tone is almost set with the intro music. It's very true crime type, and the images that are shown, how you see kind of this raucous excitement, exuberance, but there's also debaucherous side to it, and that's what the '86 Mets were. And I think
Yeah.
it's what was really fascinating to me watching it is how many parallels I could draw from '86 to just stuff we're living through now. You talk about George Foster and the race relations stuff. You talk about even something as not small, significant on the field, but something like Mike Scott scuffing baseballs, sticky substances. There's so many different parallels. And to me, it's just the game of baseball kind of repeats itself no matter what generation. And also, I think we see history repeat itself as well. So it
Mhm.
was really an interesting encapsulation. And I do think that if you look at the city comparison and talking about the kind of how the Mets rose up with the city and maybe fell with the city as well at times, it was just a fascinating look into not only the 86 Mets, but the 86 New York. And I think that the one thing that really struck me is how much fun will it be if the Mets become the villains again?
Yeah.
I think that's what, instead of being this lovable loser or the laughing stock, to get to that point again, that's what the Mets have to be looking for right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the fact that they for Mike Scott, they had like the Freddy Krueger music associated
Yeah.
with him because he was that. He was hovering over the Mets, ready to, with a pickaxe ready to end their hopes. So I love that part. But yeah, the Astros have been cheating longer than we think. They've been
Yeah,
cheating
I
since
didn't even think about
1986.
that.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, no, as far as the Mets, in 1986 were, I, as you can see from the documentary, hugely popular. The city fell in love with them because they represented the city, and the fact that the Mets are the quote unquote little brothers of the Yankees is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is that if that's the right term?
Yeah.
The Mets have kind of, well, the old regime kind of created this. They didn't need to be didn't need to be the little brothers. They could have stood toe to toe. Let's forget about the championships. They could stand side by side with the Yankees, and they can now with new ownership. So, and as we see in the documentary, I mean, they can rule the city for sure, and they did then with they ruled. I mean, basically the baseball world. So that gives me watching that gave me a lot of emotions. Jealousy was one of them because I just wish I could have lived through that. I've only lived through it through historical, historical content like this documentary and hearsay, um, and also hope that if, if they win again, I'll rather say when they win again. It's gonna be especially sweet, and I can't wait for that.
I think that one of the things that struck me as well, when you watch that documentary and you see how important Keith Hernandez was to everything. I mean, the way that he was regarded as a leader, not only just for his great defense and his bat, but the way that he would go to the mound and say, no, just throw the fastball. Don't even listen to it. Throw the fastball and all the different things. To me, when you watch that, it just once again becomes, I know we've talked about it before, but more of a crime that number 17 hasn't been retired. I think that this is another shining example of why that should happen and happen in the near future.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that Keith Hernandez was made as the central figure of the team, because he should, and he is, because that trade in 1983 was the best trade the Mets ever made, and you saw it in the documentary as far as like how much of a leader he was, not only going to the mound in Game 6 of the '86 NLCS, going Jesse Orosco, I'll I'll hit you if you throw another fastball because you don't have it right now. Um, as much as Gary Carter was also there as a veteran presence, I mean, Keith was definitely the leader. I mean, he was there before him. He really had the pitcher's ear, as you said. Like he would go to the mound and just say, "Oh, just throw the fastball. Don't listen to Gary." As much as great as Gary was and important as he was to that team, obviously the last piece coming over in '85 and the example he set. I mean, Keith was really the central figure of the team, and I'm glad the documentary showed that. It's unfortunate we can't have Gary interviewed, and it certainly was great to have Sandy, his widow, but it's too bad we don't have Gary to kind of give his side of things and be more of an interview subject. But it was fantastic to have Keith, and Haji as well, but to have Keith kind of talking more about you know his role on the team, and how important he was.
One of the other things that caught me, and I was just, again, I watched this pretty much. I watched the first three parts last night. I think I started it at want to say 12. So I look up and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I could watch this last part, but I got all day tomorrow. So let me wait till tomorrow. So I watched the fourth part today, and Frank Cashion builds this great team, and then he tears it down as well. And I think it really did boil down to, at one point, that they say there was 4 stars on the team. You had Gary and Keith, who were getting run down as far as their age, and then you had Doc and Daryl. We know what happened there, and clearly the Mets had no way to handle those guys. And I think in a certain respect, there's a lot of people to blame. I mean, Davey Johnson was very much just gets the ballpark. I don't care as long as you're there. Maybe they needed a manager that was paying a little more attention to what they were doing off the field. Frank Cashion clearly had no idea, what was going on behind the scenes and had to deal with the problem, because he trades Kevin Mitchell, a future MVP, a guy that, I mean, can you imagine? It's almost, I'm trying to think of a parallel in the current Mets, but it would almost be like trading Michael Conforto out of after 2015. It makes no sense considering what the guy produced on the field, and you get rid of him simply because he's the third black player and you can't get rid of the other two. I mean, I really think it's interesting that someone can be so important to a franchise and also be the thing that maybe ruined a dynasty.
Yeah, if I had to, I don't want to speak speak wrongly of people who have passed, and Frank Cashion we lost a few years ago. But I think he's mainly responsible for the reason he's the reason why the '86 Mets became champions. He's also the reason why the team didn't win another. I think he's most responsible. There's a lot of reasons, but I would say he's the most responsible. The fact that he got rid of Ray Knight and Kevin Mitchell, and I think as far as the situation with Doc and Daryl and Kevin Mitchell, I think that was a product of the times, not getting Doc and Daryl the help they needed, understanding their what they had, the demons that they were fighting. And then as far as trading away Kevin Mitchell because he might be a bad influence on Dwight Gooden and Daryl Strawberry, it's just, it's just I don't mean ignorant might be the wrong word. It might be racist, but it's not understanding the black athlete during that time. I mean, at all. So
Yeah.
the fact that you just traded him because you thought he was, affecting them, which wasn't true, was a terrible mistake. I mean, as you said, went to the Padres and then went to the Giants very shortly after that and won an MVP with the Giants in '89. But losing Mitchell and Knight, you were losing really the personality of the team. Two people you really didn't want to get in a fight with, and the Mets obviously had 4 fights. They were pretty good at it. So
Yeah.
you chip away at the character and the personality of the team. It really showed itself in the ensuing years.
Yeah, and I think that chemistry was built up years prior, 84 through 86. A lot of those guys played together in the minor leagues, graduate together up to the big league level, and forming that identity as a team is something that, I don't think you'll ever recreate the '86 Mets. But if you look at every world champion, there is a certain identity that's formed. And I think if you're looking at this current Mets team, as much as they had talked about team chemistry and all these things, clearly something has not clicked, because there isn't that same, I don't know what it is, that special magic that helps you win these games and show that you're a really great team. And honestly, I can't think of the last time outside of 2015, really. In our lifetimes, where you got 2006, 2015, those early teams in the 2000s, it's so rare. How do you form that over time? I mean, that's something that has eluded the Mets throughout the entire franchise's history.
Well, the good thing about what Frank Cashion encountered or was met with when he came on board in 1980 was that the cupboard was pretty bare, and he was basically left with rubble and had to, build from nothing. And therefore, he was given, with new ownership at the same time, was given the time to do it. I don't know, it's funny now, Steve Cohen becomes the owner, and he's basically given no time to do anything. I think he's going to, change he's going to win a World Series. I mean, I know he said 3 to 5 years, But really, he came in at the end of November, or I guess early November. It's when it was made official, and they were kind of behind the eight ball, to use for lack of a better term. It took them. Then they had to get, they tried to get a president of baseball operations GM, and they were just kind of always playing from behind. And then also that was the same case when it came to free agents. So really, like this offseason is the first to me, the first test of Steve Cohen's regime. But besides that, so I think Frank Cashion was given that opportunity to build, and he certainly did that. Save what I said about afterwards, but he drafting Darryl, drafting Doc, the acquisition of George Foster did not pan out, but it was at least an attempt to try to get a big name player. But of course, getting Hernandez and Ron Darling and Gary Carter and also those draft picks of like Lenny Dykstra and low level draft picks worked out beautifully, and it melded to the championship year in '86.
All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season, and as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, there's now even more odds, props, and contests available at betonline.ag, which continues to be your number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. Receive your 100% welcome bonus on your initial deposit with the promo code NFL100. That's double that first deposit from football, basketball, boxing, baseball, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. One reason to repair and maintain your cars is to save money. So why would you just choose to spend 30%, 50%, possibly even 100% more for the exact same amount of parts at a chain store or new car dealership when you can simply go to rockauto.com, which is a family business that's been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. They have everything you could want, from engine control modules to brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Whether it's for a classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks and have it delivered directly to your door. The rockauto.com catalog is unique, remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle, then choose the brand, specifications, and prices you prefer. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in there. How'd you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. I also liked how, just a note on the documentary, how Lenny Dykstra was used. Like, all right, if we need to get to the dirty stuff, we'll just put it all on Lenny, and he's going to give you the unfiltered take. And he was great. I mean, I'm sure that he got probably hours of Dykstra that he was able to boil down to those little bits that he would plop him in. But it was fantastic filmmaking, I'll say that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Lenny Dykstra was, say what you will about Lenny Dykstra off the field, and there's a lot to say. He was fantastic, and he is a fantastic clutch player. And as you saw in, game 3 of the NLCS with the game-winning homer, game 6 leading off the 9th inning, game 3 with the home run in the World Series leading off that game. Terrific postseason performer who was not fazed by the moment. But yeah, when I spoke with Nick, he said that Lenny was so willing to talk, and like never really was like, "Oh, I'm running out of time, I have to go." I mean, he was there, and I don't know how many hours they spoke, but it seemed like Lenny was very willing and accommodating, and it showed.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I could talk about it all day. One of the things that is kind of interesting too is the even like the booing was something that would come up. Certain guy. It's just funny how we know the current team has dealt with this. I feel like if you go through every single Mets team, the reception in New York is something that's always talked about. But when you win, I guess it's all worth it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at this team with the whole Baez and Lindor situation, which to me, in every respect, was very stupid. I know we haven't talked about it. I haven't been on since it happened, but I think it was just overall just dumb all around. I more so from the fans. and the media than the players. I think Javi Baez, should not have. I think he misspoke. Probably didn't intend for it to come out like that. He had a point because he's only been here. Had only been there like an hour and a half. So if he was being booed, why are you booing him so soon? And the same for Francisco Lindor, who was being booed a week in. So there was a point to it, and especially when I think we talk about a lot about player psychology and what's in their heads, and so there maybe should be more understanding of that. That being said, it should not have been spoken. So I'm glad that it's kind of in the past, because once you win, and in Javi Baez's case, once you perform well, people love you. So I felt even in the moment that Javi Baez would be just fine, that it would eventually go away, because I knew he was going to do fine. I still feel the same way as far as re-signing him. Like, I think if he's too much money and someone offers an enormous contract, that it probably isn't worth it. But I feel like he wants to come back, and I think they should try to get him back. So you're right. I mean, and it also goes to the debauchery you have off the field. The Mets had an 86, and I think it was mentioned that no one really stopped it, pretty much because, I don't want to say because they were winning, but winning helped the fact that no one stopped, or pointed out what they were doing off the field. So winning does cure a lot of the issues, and we saw that in '86, and we're seeing that now too.
Yeah. I mean, winning cures all is a very true statement, and when Davey Johnson says, here's the bill for wrecking the plane. Screw this, we're winning an effing World Series, or we're making them boatloads of money. They can deal with it. They can pay it. I mean, that just shows the identity of the team. One last thing I want to talk about the doc, and I think we're just going to avoid talking about this current Mets team too much. I last time we spoke, if you guys want to go back, we talked about the most disappointing seasons in Mets history from Brian's book, Mets and Tens. So you can go back, listen to that, and see how this whole thing played out. Billy Beane in the first, I think he was mostly in the first two parts of the doc. It, to me, leads even more credence to this idea that he would want to take over the Mets, because you saw, for one, I liked when he said, when he saw Frank Cashion and was like that's the guy I want to be. He didn't want to be the star player. He saw the star GM, and he's like, oh, that seems like a cushy spot, and he ended up having one of the best careers ever for an executive. Now seeing that it could come full circle, we know he was a first round pick by the Mets. But to see it come full circle, it does make a lot of sense that Billy Beane could be the guy that comes in here. And I'm just curious what your take would be if that was the ultimate result of this offseason.
Yeah, when I saw the doc and I saw him come up, I knew he was drafted by the Mets in 1980. I think he was the pick after Darryl Strawberry. And I saw him, and I'm like, well, that's a little interesting as far as why is he in here? Because I know he played, but he didn't have that much of an impact on the Mets. But I thought he was great, and it was very funny when he was talking about '86 and said, "I don't know why you're interviewing me, because I wasn't even on the team." And he was traded to the Twins for Tim Tuffle. But if you watch, and I recently watched Moneyball again, and I found it very interesting that at least as far as the character is concerned, that he often flashes back to his time with the Mets, and and this is just a hunch, I wonder if he wants, not only does he want to kind of, because he is the, originator of Moneyball, and we've seen all these other teams benefit from some form of it and win World Series, and he hasn't, that he kind of wants to have that ability to use Moneyball, and I say that in quotes, with a team with more capital. And also, I wonder if he kind of wants to come full circle. Like, I always seem like maybe it based on a movie. I know I'm maybe stretching here. That failure, if you will, as a player sticks with him. And with the Mets specifically, I know he went to other teams, but the Mets were the original team. And he would want to come back and say, I'm going to return to the Mets and bring them a World Series. That I don't know if I wonder if there's some motivation. I'm sure he's motivated, but I wonder if there's some motivation there, and maybe he has the motivation that maybe Theo Epstein does not, because Theo Epstein, when you exercise two curses, I wonder, like, what else do you need to do? And you have a cushy job with Major League Baseball, like, really, you want to come to the Mets? Okay. So I don't know. That's my feeling about Billy Beane, and I saw that story from Ken Rosenthal, and it just reinforced my thought about that. So that's how I see it, and I don't know if it was a total coincidence that he was in the documentary for more than I expected him to be. But look, I'd love it, especially, and they could bring Bob Melvin, trusted manager. I mean, David Stern's another great guy who grew up in New York and is a Mets fan, and is a young executive, who could be, the next Billy Beane, if you will, a long time GM we could have for a while, or president of baseball operations. So they're aiming high, and they should. And I think Billy Beane or David Stearns are two fantastic choices.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Theo, and to me, Theo comes maybe for a big paycheck and because he wants to get back in the game and he wants to win, and that could all be fine and well. But I think Billy Beane does have that emotional connection to the franchise. And when you add in the Sandy Alderson connection,
Yeah.
it's starting to make a lot of sense. I think Billy Beane always wanted to win one for Oakland, but if he's reading the tea leaves that they might be leaving Oakland, if they want to promote David Forst, all of these things can line up where you could say, you know what, I'm going to take one last crack at it where I'll have a $300 million payroll in New York City with, the franchise I started with. It just makes a ton of sense. So I'm hoping now that's kind of the direction they go, because, and the other aspect of it too, is that Theo Epstein had the Porter and the Scott connection. And
Yeah.
I think it'd be better to separate yourself from that tree if possible. Whereas I haven't seen much when it comes to Billy Beane on a bad PR state. It seems like he's always very good at hiring good people and running a good organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's also how I feel about Theo Epstein, and that those connections. And I think you just want to separate yourself from that, because of all the stuff that happened with Jared Porter under Theo Epstein, and Zach Scott being a disciple of Epstein as well. I don't trust. Along those same lines, I don't trust Sandy Alderson to make hiring decisions,
Yeah.
because I don't think he's learned. That being said, if he goes ahead along with Billy Beane, I think or David Stearns, those are the two best decisions. One of those two would be the best decisions he could possibly make. I think they're no brainers. I think they're no brainers.
I think so too. Well, as we come to close to an end of our season here, I just want to thank you for all the time you spent on this show this year. I'm looking forward to talking to you throughout the off season. You can find him on Twitter at Brian Wright 86. Find his writing at Metsmerize. And I want to do a special little giveaway. Do you offer signed copies of both books, the Mets Intense and Mets All-Time All-Stars?
I don't, but I could if someone's interested. Yes,
But you for Mets All-Time All-Stars, you still have the signed copies, right?
I do. I do have them.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is a special giveaway for the listeners. You're going to have to follow some directions here. For the first 5 people, this is not a giveaway on Twitter where 200 people will enter and you got a 1 in 200 chance or whatever it is. First 5 people that send me a DM with a 5-star rating for the podcast will get a signed copy. I'm going to buy 5 copies of the book and send it out. So if you can either send me a DM or email me at lockedonmets@gmail.com with that screenshot of the 5-star rating, you will get a copy of the book. First 5 who send me those will get a copy. So that's just a little token of my appreciation, Brian, for all the time you spent with us this year.